All right, hello everyone. Today we're going to begin with discussing y equal to AE equilibrium, how we derive this equation, and what this means for the overall course. So first off, we'll talk about the goal of macroeconomics. So the overall goal of macroeconomics is that we want full employment y bar. So we'll denote full employment as y bar. Um, And so we already know that Y is equal to GDP. We've defined this previously. We also know that Y represents production. And if we're producing, we have to hire people. So this means that there's a certain Y also represents a certain level of income. And we also broke it down into the different components of GDP, which are C, I, G, and NX. So when we're talking about Y bar, we're talking about a certain level of production that equals to full employment. So when we produce a certain amount of product in the economy, we have to hire people. And at a certain level of production, we've hired everyone who wants to work. And that's what we call Y bar. And so our goal is to find some Y equal to Y bar, find some level of production where everyone has a job. And the second goal is to have stable prices. This means that stable prices is equal to low and predictable inflation. This doesn't mean that prices don't change. It just means that the change in price is easy to predict. So for example, if the inflation rate is 2%, then I know that prices are only going to get 2% higher. That's nothing really big or like scary, so there's no actual shock. And we're going to use this next part, which is aggregate expenditures, which you've been getting familiar with these past couple of days. And so aggregate expenditures is equal to C, I, P, G, and NX, which is consumption, planned investment spending, government, and net exports. And so using these two components, we'll find some level of spending that's equal to full employment. So, so ignore that part for now. And so y equals to AE equilibrium. So first off, our goal is to find y equal to AE. What we're saying here is that we're trying to find some level of spending equal to our production. When we find this level of spending equal to our production, we're good. And so if we set y equal to E equal to y bar, then we say that our level of spending is equal to the level of full employment output. But so far, we're just going to say that we want our output equal to our spending. And so we want C, I, G, and X equal to C plus IP plus G plus NX. So overall, you notice that if you subtract C, G, and NX from both sides, then you're left with I equal to IP. So investment, this is on the production side, and planned investment on the spending side. So when we essentially, you can think about like actual production versus how much we spent or plan to spend. When you think about it in this way, it becomes a little bit easier. So essentially what we're trying to say is that we plan to spend a certain amount and we ended up spending that amount. Ultimately, in that our production is equal to our spending. So this is our y equal to AE equilibrium. And so we're going to draw the graph. So there's the first off, there's the y equal to AE 45-degree line. Then we have our actual aggregate expenditures line, and we have our equilibrium. So in this case, it's actually not too hard to derive it. You just draw your lines and then equilibrium. Equilibrium is right in the middle. But what happens if y is not equal to AE? So we'll first start off on the high end, where let's say we are on this section here. So you'll notice that our y is all the way up here, but our AE is here. So we notice that our y is greater than our aggregate expenditures. What does this mean? This means that our level of production is greater than our level of spending. So we didn't spend enough or we produced too much. So for example, I planned to spend $50 on shoes as a business. So I planned to make $50 worth of shoes, but I made $100 of shoes. So essentially what this means is that ultimately I have $50 left over, right? So there's an increase in inventory. We produced too much, or we didn't spend enough. I should have spent $100 or planned to spend $100, but I only planned to spend $50. Either way, there's ends up as an increase in inventory. And if there's an increase in inventory, as a business, I know that I'm producing way too much. So overall, next period, I'm just gonna produce less because I know I'm producing too much, right? So I'm just gonna decrease my level of production. And as we decrease our level of production, you know that AE is gonna decrease as well. So you end up moving along this curve up until you're at equilibrium again. And so when there's an increase in inventory, there's an incentive to decrease the GDP next period. Next up, we have this low end. This low end is pretty simple as well. You notice here that the aggregate expenditures line is taller than the y equals AE line. So this means that y is less than AE. What this means is that we didn't produce enough or we spent too much. So for example, we plan to spend $50, but we spent only 25. Either way, we're trying to sell $25 worth of shoes, but we only have 10. Either way, there's just not enough stock in inventory or not enough product to sell. And so there's a decrease in inventory. We have to make up the losses somewhere. Essentially, there's just like out of stock. You can think about it in this way. It's out of stock. And so what we're saying is that because we didn't produce enough, this means that we should just produce more next period. So therefore, there's an increase in GDP next period because we know that we need to produce more to get back to equilibrium. So we're going to move up the y equal to AE line. And as we do so, AE returns back to equilibrium here as well. So overall, what you should notice is that there's only one point of equilibrium, which is the y equals to AE, any point outside of that point is non-equilibrium, and you're going to have a change in inventory. And remember, equilibrium, we don't want there to be any incentive to change. So therefore, that is why we produce at the y equal to AE area. And so what you should be looking forward to next week is, now that we know where we're producing, we want to know how we can use this to get to our y bar full employment. So for example, if y bar is all the way over here, how do we get to y bar all the way over here? And if y bar is way down here, how do we get down here? And so we'll cover all of that next week. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out, or you can put your questions in the comment section below, and then I'll reply to them in the comments below. All right, that'll be all for this week. It's a pretty short video, but just really work on your concepts and you'll be fine.